Let me come to you then. The suspension of this levy, you say, is because you're watching the, or shall I say, testing the temperature of what's going on geopolitically, as well as other factors. But this has been greeted with some very strong words by the minority. They say it's a trial and error approach to governance. I want your reaction to that.
I've missed this panel. My brother, thank you for opening the fireworks. Anyway, Helen, you see, good morning to our cherished viewers once again. For me, there's the tendency for us to miss the whole picture, especially if you want to throw in the NPP's presser into the mix. One significant thing is happening, and that should occupy our thoughts. And basically, that has to do with the kind of leader we queued to give our mandate to on the 7th of December, 2024. And that is His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama. It has always been my position that in this country, we take for granted in taking our decisions, especially when it comes to who leads us, we fail to do deeper reflection and assessment of the personalities who run to become president. And many of us, maybe largely because of our educational backgrounds, have made it a point to follow those who seek to lead us and to understand these personalities. And I think that to an appreciable level, I can say, seated in this chair, that I have a fair idea of the kind of person Ghanaians gave their mandate to and voted for. This is not a president who waits to deal with effects of bad decisions. This is a president who has demonstrated incredible foresight when it comes to the leading of this country. Not just even in his second term now, but did so as president in his first term. Remember his approach to doom so, like my brother indicated earlier. When successive governments decided to be engaged in the usual politics of addressing only the effects, he accepted responsibility, dealt with it head-on, and as a result of that, invested heavily in the energy sector that the NPP, upon assumption of office, decided to declare as excess capacity, largely pioneered by the visionary leadership of His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, because he understood that there was an annual increment in demand when it comes to electricity. So at that point, it was not enough for him to just resolve it, but he needed to plan ahead. Again, we are dealing with a president, even before he was sworn into office, understood clearly that when we talk about economic recovery, it goes beyond the lectures Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and co. were holding in our universities, tying themselves only to economic fundamentals. President Mahama understood that there's no way you can recover your economy without taking a look at the political effects or the effects political decisions would have on economic fundamentals. And he knew that Ghana found itself in a very difficult situation because our president had carelessly, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, accused the like of Burkina Faso of hiring the Wagner forces, and so created a situation that made it practically impossible for us to engage in a diplomatic fashion with our neighbors. So President Mahama, even before his swearing in, decided to jet off to African countries, trying to reposition the image of this country, because he understood that no matter the economic policies he championed as president, if he fails to send that political signal out there to our neighbors, to African leaders, and especially to the Sahel states, that would be under threat. So he needed to satisfy that leg of politics that undoubtedly would have an effect on our economic performance. And he swung straight into action by those visitations to build that kind of acceptable relationship with our neighbors. He didn't stop there. He proceeded to single out the Sahel state and even proceeded to appoint an envoy to be directly responsible to their activities, because he appreciates that economically there seem to be that interlinkages. So this is a president with a foresight. And immediately that was done, he led his finance minister and they presented one of the most far-reaching budgets to the good people of this country, that became the basis of our recent economic recovery successes that we are choking, and we are even being modest about celebration, because you have not seen his government jump into organized KNK parties.
You want to be measured with the way in which you celebrate.
Because we understand that the work ahead of us is tedious. We understand that the expectations of the Ghanaian people are onerous. And we are being led by a man who understands that it is not just about solving today's problems, but being in a position to make it impossible for us to have to deal with the effects of our failure to holistically address today's problems in the future. So that is the kind of foresight we are talking about. And so for me, yesterday when I woke up to the announcement, I said, lo and behold, this is the President John Dramani Mahama I know. And this is the President John Dramani Mahama we campaigned for. Because he did not wait to begin to feel the impact of the Iranian-Israeli conflict before acting. Because he understood that there were problems with the energy sector. He brought on board a fix that we were convinced that would help resolve the matter. Unfortunately, Iran-Israeli conflict happened. President Mahama didn't have to wait until the next pricing window. He directed his minister responsible for energy and finance to begin modeling the possible impacts of such an attack on the economic fortunes of this country. And I am pretty much convinced, like my brother Richard Roxon has indicated, that it is as a result of that modeling and the possible effect an increment would have even on the exchange rate gains that resulted in the decision of government to suspend same. So Helen, that is the kind of leader we have. That is the kind of change Ghanaians voted for. Proactive leadership. That leadership of foresight and preparing to ensure that you don't unnecessarily burden the Ghanaian people. What more do we need? What more? And you see, as for the NPP, I've always argued, and I tell many of our communicators, saying, there's always the tendency, because of the havoc they subjected this country into, there's always a tendency in our bid to respond to them in equal measure. We are likely to come across as being insensitive. So there's always a need for us to create a distinction when we are communicating directly to the good people of Ghana and when we are responding directly to the NPP as a party that took this country for granted in the last 8 years. And that is the reason why I've had to make this distinction, to show you the kind of leader we have and the justification behind this policy.